I'm making some nut plate brackets to put on the stringers on the airplane, the formers on the airplane, to screw in some of the paneling. Basically, what I did is I cut some 1.5 by 1 inch rectangular pieces of 40 thousandths, and then I measured 1/4 of an inch over, and that's the width of those the metal on those formers, and then half of that is 1/8 of an inch. I drilled a couple of holes 1/8 of an inch from the edge, centered on 1/8 of an inch in the edge for 3/32 rivets, and that'll mount those to the formers. And then we'll put nut plates, number 4 nut plates. They're the micro nut plates on here, and they're just riveted in like this. Now this one is flat. This one goes for the rear bulkhead, and these others I bent. Now I made one and I've got it set up over there on the panel, held on to it, and so I made in it to kind of get an idea of what I needed. And so then I got the idea fleshed out what I needed, and so I made a whole bunch of them here, and I'll go ahead and mount nut plates to them, and then I'm going to take them and powder coat them so that they have a nice finish on them, instead of the bare aluminum. Now that one's perfect. This one I'm going to drill out. So I'll set it aside as a reject, and we'll go on and do some more of these. These little nut plates and number 4 miniatures, and so they're tighter together where these rivets go, and they're a floating nut plate. So one of the problems I got with the floating nut plates is when you put these rivets in, you can't, if you're not careful, you squeeze this bracket here, and then the nut plate gets froze in there, and it's not floating anymore. So anyway, there's a cage around that nut, and it doesn't take much to dimple that to screw up that floating aspect of it. Regular flat die is pretty good sized, and a face on it, and for doing flat-headed rivets. So what I did is I did this several years ago for another project, but I took a flat die and ground it down to a smaller point so it can get in there to those areas and set those rivets without getting into the cage portion of it. Actually, I did this to fit down inside of a countersink washer to get rivets to in the countersink washer, but it works for this purpose just as well. So anyway, I wind up with a nice flush set. I tried it with the regular dies on there, and I got a nice set on the rivet, but I also peened over the edge of that cage a little bit, so I pretty much ruined that one. So I got one good one. Now on to some more. I've got these brackets here that I made, nut plate brackets, and they will rivet onto parts of the airplane to help hold some of the sheet metal panels. And I've got them set up here now, getting ready to powder coat them. See, I've got them hanging. This is just the grill, or just the rack out of an oven, and I got these held on with safety wire. I think it's 16,000 safety wire, because these are pretty light brackets. They really don't need a whole lot of weight on them. I put pretty good sized loops in them to keep from getting any holidays or voids in the from the shadow of the wire, or the hold-ups on the parts themselves. And then I've taken, now this rack I've used several times for this, and it gets coated with powder coat, so it doesn't make a good electrical connection once you get powder coat on your holds, on your pieces to hold your parts. and you need a pretty good electrical connection for the static electricity to build up and flow on these things. So I've taken a safety wire and just tied everything all in together. It doesn't have to be good physical connection or anything like that, just enough to get an electrical connection. That way I can, now you can hook those up and move the ground clamp on the powder coating gun from one to another, but when you're doing gang stuff like this, it's a heck of a lot easier just to have a common ground. So I can just hook the ground lead up to one of those pigtails there, and that'll have everything interconnected. So that is ready to be sprayed. This is what I use for powder coat oven, and it's just an old oven that we got. Somebody had set out on the side of the road, and that's what I use for powder coating. Now that's all I use the oven for. I use it for drying out my silica desiccate for my air dryers and stuff like that too, but we don't use it to cook in. We can't use the top to cook on. Right now I've got a pot there of some old chicken and meat and stuff. We're making broth to put on the dog's food, and we heat water up on there to scald the chickens when we're plucking them and a few things like that. So the top is still usable, but I wouldn't cook edible food in the oven anymore. Problem with that oven is it's limited to pretty small parts. What you can get in there is not a very big space, but it just heated up to 450 degrees. No, it's only to 200 now because I was doing something else. Now I'm going to have to preheat it a little more. 400, yeah, 425, 450. There's different recommendations from different sites on what you use. So 425 to 450, and then there's different times and stuff like that. And I think most of it depends on who the powder coater company is or whatever. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. The main thing is to get the plastic to melt, to flow out, and then ideally you get the pores of the metal to open up so it bonds into the pores more, but mainly is to get it to flow out into gloss. So now this is my workbench where I was just putting this stuff together, and what I was doing in here was just cleaning it up. I washed parts down with turpentine first. Use lacquer thinner or something like that, but lacquer thinner leaves a residue on the metal, so you wind up with a poor finish if you use lacquer thinner. So virgin acetone would work for a cleaner, but I've been using this PPG acryliclean. I use it for everything, for all my painting projects as a final cleaning step. Gets all of the wax and fingerprints and oils and all of that kind of stuff off. You know, it won't take paint off or anything. You need a good solvent to take paint, things like that off. You need to get down to a good base metal, but acryliclean works for a finish, and you get a good finish on it with that. So that's what I use. And then this is the powder coating outfit here. It's just an Eastwood hot coat gun, the cheap one, and it has some disadvantages, but for a fly-by-night operation like this, it works fine. I bought powder in bigger containers than what they, well, actually this is from Eastwood. This is their powder here, but we've got bigger containers. This is gloss black, which is what I'm going to use. I've got to clean my gun up and set it up for that, but I've got a container bottle here that I just strictly use for gloss black, and the one that's on there now is for I don't know whether that one's for a corrosion inhibiting primer. I'm not going to use that on this job, but then I've got some blasted aluminum that I use for some parts. Now to set the gun up, basically I set it up to a real low air pressure. They recommend 10 pounds or so. I found that less works just as well, if not better. So I turn the air pressure all the way down to 0 and then bring it up to about 5 pounds or so. So that gauge is not real accurate. You can't tell within 1/10 of a pound how much it is, but that's about 5 pounds. and that seems to work the best. If you use any less, you don't get any siphon out of the gun, and if you use any more, it just blows the powder all over the place. These are the powder coated parts out of the oven now. I'm hanging up here a little bit to cool off. They're cooled off now, so we'll take them off there and go put them to use. The nice thing about the powder coating is once they're cooled off enough to handle, you can start using them. Paint, a lot of times you start using it within a couple of days and the paint all peels and stuff and it gets nasty. But powder coating, they're all done, they're ready to use. Here's all the pieces, all powder coated, demounted, ready to start putting on the airplane. I've got some tabs here that are straight tabs to go on the back ones and some bent tabs to go on the sides and the long tab. I've got the plates, the brackets made and riveted onto these formers here and with the nut plates on them. This is a long one that goes on this former, and this is the end of that panel, so it needed a little bit more support than the other ones. But that's just a 16 gauge or a 16 thousandths piece there that's bent. It's plenty stiff enough for that. I got 2 brackets on this, 2 brackets on this, and then I've got 5 back here on this rear one. That really stiffened that up real nice.